Hi friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the last 3 books that I read in July that I thought I included in my incredibly long July wrap-up. Link above if you have like an hour. Also talking about the things that I read in the first little bit of August. And then at the end I'm going to include a little bit of update life stuff. So stay tuned if you are interested in a change that might impact the channel. I read 3 books at the end of July that I forgot to include in my reading wrap-up. The first one was Love Her or Lose Her by Tessa Bailey. So this is the sequel in the Hot and Hammered series. It's the sequel to Fix Her Up, which I listened to on audio in July and I had so many issues with. Now the only reason I picked up the sequel was because, again, I borrowed it from the library and I really liked the Just Us League of Women. This follows Rosie, who is one of the women in the Just Us League. Rosie has a really terrible relationship with her childhood sweetheart. They are now like fully adults together and he has served a tour overseas and has come back very like silent and broody and their relationship sucks and they're just profoundly bad at communicating and she's like, you know what, I deserve better. Like, I'm done with this marriage that isn't working. That was excellent, except they have incredible sexual chemistry, as we are reminded frequently. I know this is a romance book, but it was just gross. And once again, we have unrealistic 9-inch eggplant to contend with. The relationship just sounds so toxic. They have like 4 couples counseling sessions and this apparently makes Dom realize that like him being this toxic silent protector controlling what his woman does is maybe not good and that maybe he should have like not secretly bought a house with all of their savings that was supposed to go to the restaurant and like talk to his wife about what she wanted. I don't know, it just sounds terrible. I gave it 1 star and I borrowed it from Libby. The second last book that I read in July was volume 1 of Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. So I read Radio Silence by Alice Oseman last year. There's a lot of hype around Radio Silence online. I decided to give Heartstopper a shot and I loved it. It was so cute and so heartwarming. It follows the friendship of Charlie and Nick. And so Charlie is out as gay in the school. Nick sees him running one day and he's like, oh, he's really fast. He should join our rugby team. He'd be really good for that. And so they start developing this really cute best friend friendship. And at the same time, Charlie is in a really toxic relationship with a closeted gay boy at the school. He meets Charlie secretly all over the school and is kind of mean to him and like they do sexual things. So this is a graphic novel and I really like the single color palette. I am a big fan of single color palette graphic novels and the illustrations are okay. They kind of look like someone has sort of taken a stab at the sort of anime style, but maybe perverted it, made it a little bit their own. And like, I really enjoyed the relationship between the 2 characters. I would definitely love to check out the next 2 volumes in this series. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars and this was a new buy. Then I listened to Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I borrowed this from the library, again, because there's all these hyped romance texts, right? And I wanted to give it a chance as something light because this has been, the end of July, beginning of August has been incredibly stressful and overwhelming and I just wanted something light and fun. So Red, White, and Royal Blue is about the fake relationship for the press between the president's son and the royal prince. There's a faux pas made at a party and so to maintain like political niceness between the two countries. They force a fake friendship between the two boys. So we have Alex Claremont Diaz, who is the biracial son of the first female president of the USA, and Prince Henry. And so they've been like enemies for a very long time. And so of course this is a long distance, hate to love relationship in a fantasy alternate universe of our world, like parallel universe to our world. I liked the relationship between the two boys. I thought it was fun. I thought it was cute. I thought there was entirely too much politics. On the one hand, you've heard me complain about how I hate when romance revolves around weak conflict, and I feel like this time the conflict is around keeping this queer relationship secret for the US president who is trying to get reelected, right? She's the first female president, so she's in a precarious spot. So to have her son be openly gay and in a queer relationship publicly will affect her reelection, probably, because America. And so like the conflict is around the external opposed to just something stupid in their relationship. The conflict seems to be about how this relationship has to stay a secret, and like as a prince, he has princely duties. Prince Henry has princely duties, like he's expected to marry even though the royal family has like no power in the UK. They're just sort of figureheads that people enjoy taking pictures of and gossiping about. Like, again, his relationship shouldn't really have an impact, but it does because conservatives. I thought that the conflict was interesting. I don't care about those politics in particular. I think it's the same with that Becky Albertalli book, Yes, No, Maybe So, where a significant amount of time was spent detailing the like inner workings of the American voting system, and I was like, I do not care. I'm a Canadian, I do not care. And like some of the criticisms in the comments of that video were like, well, you should care because you should know about all politics, especially American ones. And then other people were like, no, I totally get this. Like, America thinks everything revolves around them and we all need to understand their politics when they literally probably can't even name our country, let alone what form of government we have. So like, why should we give any fucks about the inner workings of the American voting system, which makes zero sense, by the way. When you look into it, it is the most bananas voting system I think I've read about or been forced to learn about just by its dominance. Anyways, besides the point, I feel like the politics in Red, White, and Royal Blue had the sort of same like, but why? Why should I care? And it was such a chunky book. This is a huge romance book. I just want them to be happy. Like that woman from Mean Girls who just wants people to be happy and bake cakes with rainbows and sunshines. And maybe this is not what romance is, and maybe it wouldn't sell, but I just want to witness people being happy. Give me more cute, rich people vacation at the lake. Like, give me the cuddles and the bonfires and the making breakfast together. Don't give me going to the ballots. Like, yes, that's also part of life, but it doesn't do anything for the romance. This is the romance. It's about their relationship. And yet it also became about voting. Unpopular opinion. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay. If I owned a physical copy, I would probably skip every part of the book that was not about Henry and Alex. So then we get into August. So I borrowed and listened to the Guernsey, oh, I'm gonna butcher this title, the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Shaffer and Annie Barrows. Now, I had watched the movie first. I was looking just for an audiobook because I needed something to distract myself. I was going into like these anxiety spirals and like physical nausea, like physical panic reactions. Because I don't have enough projects on the go, I started working on a new mosaic crochet blanket and just focused on mosaic crochet and listening to this audiobook. So this is about a writer who is, I believe, in London. This is post-World War II, and she ends up corresponding with a gentleman on Guernsey, which was occupied by the Germans during the war, and so they were very isolated from all of the news of London throughout the war, and now slowly that's coming in, that information's coming in. And so it's a correspondence back and forth about how this literary society formed when they had a secret pig that they'd hidden from the Germans, and so they had a secret roast dinner, and then they were coming back after curfew, and the Nazis were like, what are you doing past curfew? And so they on the spot bullshitted about this literary and potato peel pie society that they got so wrapped up in their book discussion that they lost track of time. Very sorry, they stayed out past curfew, yada yada, and then how that turned into a real literary society, because if the Germans were to look in on them, they needed to actually have proof that this thing existed, and then it sort of became a friendship building thing during the war, sharing books, distraction. So I don't really know if I can review this. I know that at the time I enjoyed it. I found it comforting. I think I would one day like to pick up a physical copy and reread it. I think the idea of book clubs and reading being like escape and a safe place are very interesting, very heartwarming. My notes in my bullet journal say that I gave it a 4 to 5 stars, so that was my immediate emotional reaction on August 1st when I rated it, but unfortunately I didn't write anything about it, so basically I'm just mentioning this thing that I consumed that was comforting and distracting. The next book that I read was Joyland by Stephen King, so this was for the Red Rum Book Club. I thought it would be fun to pick this up. So the Red Rum Book Club, in chapter 1 we were looking at the first few books in Stephen King's bibliography and looking at how his writing has grown and developed, and I thought it would be fun to throw in something fun and summery during the summer, because this is such an atmospheric book. Now, I read this a long time ago. This is one of the earliest videos you could find on my channel still, I think. I talked about how much I loved this book. And so for years, I have recommended this book as being really atmospheric, really fun. And this is the first Stephen King book that I have reread and not enjoyed as much. I kept trying to figure out what the plot was. Like, I'd forgotten the plot, and the reason I'd forgotten the plot is because there isn't really a plot. It is very much a coming-of-age novel about a guy named Devin Jones. He's working at this B-list, C-list amusement park bordering on Carnival for a summer. Not so many years ago, there was a serial killer who murdered a young woman named Linda Gray in the park while on a ride. Very ballsy moment, and the killer was never caught. And so there's rumors that the park is haunted. Dev is heartbroken. His girlfriend has cheated on him and broken up with him. And he wants to be a writer. It's just a little bit of a mess. There isn't really a clear plot. It is heavy on nostalgia. It is heavy on the atmosphere. Both of those are beautiful. As a character study for seeing Devin grow, that works really well, I think. But like, in my head, I was thinking of this as like a carnival ghost story, and that is definitely not the case. Nor is it a murder mystery, which is the other thing I was sort of thinking of, because I knew that he was going to investigate the murder of Linda Gray, and I couldn't remember how that panned out, and the answer is it really doesn't either. So if you are looking for a very atmospheric summer read, that is a coming of age, a young man sort of stepping into adulthood, working into adulthood, I would recommend this, but in terms of like a horror novel, a ghost story, a murder mystery, thriller sort of thing, no. In the past, this was a 5-star book for me, and on this reread, I did bump it down to 3 stars. The next book that I read, I borrowed from my library on audio, and that is With Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. And I have to say, this book didn't make a lot of an impression on me, unfortunately. Again, I only finished this on August 6th. It is August 14 today. All I can remember really is that this is about a teen mother who has a passion for cooking and is negotiating a relationship with a new boy who's very accepting of the fact that she has a child and she has a past. Adulting. She is going to have to negotiate graduating high school, being a parent, maybe not being able to take the conventional route that a lot of people do to becoming a chef if that's what she wants. I do remember thinking about how I appreciate that Acevedo has characters with unique interests, that has like, I feel like we see so many like nerdy young adult protagonists, especially now. They're like, oh, I love Marvel. I'm a big Marvel fan. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. Like, they're all readers and movie watchers, or they're into sports. Like, I think sports, dance, cheerleading, that's pretty popular as well. But I don't know that I've ever encountered a protagonist whose passion is cooking, who has this skill for knowing flavors and how things are missing and how they should be put together and like making art with food. I do appreciate that. Maybe I shouldn't have read this one on audio because this one isn't poetry. Like, I loved The Poet X being read to me. Acevedo is a slam poet, and The Poet X, Xiomara, is a slam poet. And so to have it told in verse makes sense. I loved that audiobook. This audiobook, meh. I mean, there were things that I definitely appreciated about it, and yet I'm left just sort of empty feeling towards it, if that makes sense. And that could be entirely down to my decision to listen to it on audiobook. So if I ever get the opportunity to borrow a physical copy, I would definitely be interested in giving it another shot. The next book that I read is a short story by Sally Rooney, and that is Mr. Salary. So this is the story of a young girl who ends up in the care of a older friend of the family. And my immediate reaction was like, oh god, why would you leave this like young girl in the care of an older single man? This is clearly a recipe for disaster, especially because she seems to be sexually interested in him and kind of hints at wanting him to make advances, even though there's like a at least 15-year age gap between them. This picks up with her coming home. She's studying in the US and he picks her up from the airport, and there's sort of like some innuendos between them. She thinks back to this one time that he was drunk and they kissed, and she was like, yeah, we kissed. And he was like, no, we shouldn't do this. I'm gonna go to bed. It's, again, like a lot of Sally Rooney's work, a snapshot of peopling, being very normal and sort of challenging the, I guess, the nuclear family, that like intimate relationships happen in different ways from the standard nuclear family. Because I mean, them having sex, they're not related, so it's not incest. She's an adult, he's an adult. There's a huge age gap between them, so there's nothing technically wrong with it. It's just that he has been in a caregiver role in the past, and so it's weird for them to fuck. I'm curious to see what Sally Rooney does throughout the rest of her career, because so far all of her books have been about intimate relationships, a lot of like miscommunications or like a failure to communicate like explicitly, sex, and also the ways that relationships can happen in non-stereotypical, non-nuclear ways. So I'm curious to see what her next novel looks like. I'm sure she's working on another novel after the success of Normal People. So I gave that 3 to 5 stars. It was okay, and it was a new buy. The next book that I have here, I was actually sent unsolicited by Simon & Schuster Canada, and that is The Black Kids by Christina Hammonds Reed. So this, I feel like, is very much in the vein of The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is a book written with a white audience in mind, I think. Like with The Hate You Give, where Black people are very much aware of police violence, of like the danger of existing and being Black in the world, and how the safety is always up for debate. A simple thing like walking through a neighborhood while being Black could result in your death. That, I'm sure, Black people don't need to learn about. The same goes for The Black Kids. These are about the 1992 riots in LA. I'm sure that if you are Black and you live in the area, that is part of your history. Like, if you're involved in activism at all, I'm sure that is part of the history, right? The history of race riots. This book could not be more timely in that this starts with police murdering a Black man. It is caught on camera. We've seen it time and time again in the following, like, almost 30 years since 92, that it is still a thing that police officers can commit murder and get away with it. Our main character here, Ashley, her parents have broken the cycle of poverty. So I think it goes 3 generations back. Her great-grandparents, I believe, were freed slaves, and they moved into professions that gave them a leg up. So her grandfather was an accountant, her grandmother was a background dancer and singer in old Hollywood films, which gave their children a leg up in that they were able to afford certain things that other folks couldn't. So for example, both of Ashley's parents are university educated. Her father in particular went to grad school. Each generation benefited from the fortune of the generation before them, which results in Ashley and her sister being in the position to go to a private school that feeds into like the top tier big name universities in the States. So Ashley is in a very privileged position. She is not on scholarship. She's one of the only Black kids not on scholarship. Her friends are largely white. They don't have any consequences for their actions. So, for example, early on in the book, we see her friends, they're drinking, they're smoking weed, they decide to break into a neighbor's backyard and go swimming in the pool, and a police officer or a security guard catches up with them, and of course, they want to see Ashley's ID. They don't care about anyone else, but they want to see Ashley's ID. Ashley rarely drinks. She never does drugs with her friends when they're like this, because she knows that the consequences for her will be entirely different than her friends. Even if someone were to pursue something with her friends, their parents can just like buy the school a new library and they won't get suspended, or pay somebody off and they won't get arrested. They won't even get community service, right? A lot of this book, I think, is for a white audience, because any Black reader has probably lived through all of the microaggressions that we have demonstrated for us as a white audience. This book is for the white reader as like a wake the fuck up. Do something. Vote. Look for more information. How can you support the Black community? Because this is not okay. Like, some of the things that happen in here, without spoiling, are fairly traumatic. I can only imagine are meant to provoke a feeling of intense discomfort in a white reader that this is a reality. I mean, I would definitely recommend that you pick this up. It's a part of LA's history that I was not aware of. I think this is also the first book set in LA that didn't make LA feel dirty. Any of the books that I've read set in LA just make it feel like this totally unappealing, gross, inhuman, distant, hot, dirty place that is tainted by corruption and power. And I think this is the first book that has made people and neighborhoods feel real and warm and lived in and, I guess, worth being interested in. Like, I have no interest in LA. And I feel like it's a place of interest for a lot of people, but I have absolutely no interest in LA because of how other people tend to describe the experience of being in it. And this is the first book that has very much been rooted in LA, in the culture, in the beaches, in the boardwalks, in the neighborhoods, that hasn't made it feel like a place that people shouldn't live. You know? I would definitely recommend checking it out. I do think it is worth the hype. I think especially if you are a white reader, if you are wanting to look into the history of activism, the history of race riots, this was something that I was totally unaware of. Because, I mean, first of all, Canadian, not at all interested in LA or the history of LA, so why would that even come up? But I think in terms of the history of activism, thinking about peaceful protest versus rioting, like the pros and cons of each, this could be a very interesting place to start if you want to think about the history of activism. A very easy, digestible, readable text. I do want to thank Simon & Schuster for sending this to me, even though I was not obligated to talk about this at all. Like, this was sent unsolicited. This is my honest opinion. I thank them for sending this my way. The last book that I read was I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman. I really enjoyed Heartstopper. I wanted something YA, and I wanted it to be meaty, following up The Black Kids, which is also a very meaty YA text, and Alice Oseman does not disappoint. So it alternates perspectives between Angel, who is a super fan, her whole life is devoted to the boy band The Ark, and Jimmy is the lead singer of The Ark. And so we flip back and forth. Angel has come to London to meet with her online pen pal Juliet, supposed to go to meet and greets, meet fans, and go to this concert. And we watch Jimmy as the band is sort of falling apart. The one band member has a relationship that he has to keep secret because his girlfriend doesn't want to be in the public eye, and also they don't want to sort of break the fans' shipping of Jimmy and Rowan. Jimmy is experiencing an intense amount of anxiety. His mental health is sort of deteriorating as the thought of breaking into the American market looms. They have this new contract looming that will mean more tours, more press, more being on all the time. He's deteriorating at the thought of that. The drummer, Lister, is an alcoholic and just like slowly failing to function as a human because of his access to wealth, which gives him access to drugs and alcohol. We sort of watch this narrative come closer and closer to this point of Jimmy and Angel meeting in this absolute catastrophe. I'm not going to say what happens, but I found the flipping perspectives, it was so well done. Like, it is the same moment in time that Angel is reading completely different from how Jimmy is reading this moment. I devoured this book. I read this book in one afternoon. I could not put it down. Seeing Jimmy as this person with anxiety, my anxiety is nothing compared to Jimmy's anxiety. His runs into paranoia as well. We watch him mentally deteriorate. We can see him leading towards this point of break, and you're like, how, when you are at the top of everything, you are like blacking out during performances, during interviews, like you have everything in the world. You are this famous, like One Direction, or BTS is probably more comparable nowadays, like level of fame and fandom. How would I deal with that? Like, the amount of pressure to be the front man of this incredibly famous band, the singer, a person who performs normal and happy so well, Like, nobody sees the anxiety spirals that he's hiding. His bandmates do a good job covering up for him when he is particularly bad. That he loves what he does. He loves making music. He loves his bandmates, but it's clearly also killing him. It was wholly, I want to say, wonderful to feel validated. Like, because I can read what Jimmy is going through and on the one time totally sympathize, totally empathize, totally relate to the absolutely unfounded thought spirals, and yet I can see how irrational they are in Jimmy's case and be like, well, you got to think this is irrational. But knowing my own anxiety, being like, obviously, like, I can't think myself out of this irrational anxiety. So it was beautiful and I loved it. I gave that book 5 out of 5 stars. It was a new buy. Very happy. Quickly before we go, I have 2 things. The first thing is that the Red Rum Book Club Chapter 2 will be starting in September. So the Red Rum Book Club is a patron exclusive book club. I will be putting up a separate announcement for it. We are going to be rereading the Dark Tower series together. So we're going to be journeying to the Dark Tower as our own little patron exclusive catet. So for September, October, November, December, we are going to read the first 3 books in the Dark Tower series. The last book is quite a bit larger, so we're splitting it up over November and December just because I know that, I mean, my own job in retail is not going to give me time to read 2 massive books, and I feel like a lot of cultures have holidays around this time. This just gets packed. If you're in school, it's exam season, so how this works is we read the book over the month, and then at the end of the month, I host a live show where we will discuss the book together. I think it's gonna be a fun time. It's gonna be very fun to reread these books for myself because I read the books in 2017, did a whole video series on it, and had a lot of fun with that. So I think it'll be really fun to reread them, and I think it will be really fun to do that in community. So if you are interested in joining us in that reread, in the journey to the tower, a link to the Patreon page is in the description box down below. It's available to patrons at all tiers, so for as little as $1 a month, you can have access. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I got a house! My partner and I finally, after so many months of looking, we bought a house. August 1st was our home inspection, hence all of the stress. Maybe at some point I'll do a whole house video. For now, know that it was a terrible process, house hunting during COVID, and it is such a relief to finally have a house. We take possession of the house on August 27th, so we had a very short closing because this was an empty unit. I am alternating between excitement and terror, which I'm assured is normal. Content has been a little bit irregular because every day that I am not working, I am working on decluttering and packing what I can. There will be a packing up and moving my bookshelves video at some point in the future, so know that content is going to be a little bit weird. I'm sorry for that, but once we are in the new house, we are set up. I do want to go back to more regular content posting, and I will take you on this journey where I can. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on these books in the comments down below. I want to thank my patrons for being so patient, so understanding with this wonky bit of content. Your support has meant so much, particularly the messages that are like, we don't care about the extra content, we care about you as a human. I will not be buying a house again. This is a very unique circumstance. So I just want to thank them so much for their support, so much for their understanding and their excitement for me in this like big life event. I hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. Links to Black Lives Matter resources are in the description box down below. The titles will be listed down below if you are interested in checking any of them out. I'll see you at some point in the future. Bye.